Golden Horse. Title: Golden Horse. Saturday, May 18, 2025. Dedication. For the wanderers who chase the glint of impossible dreams, and for the quiet souls that listen when the world tells them to be silent. Prologue. The Whisper of Gold. The river sang a low, relentless hymn as it cut through the scarred canyon, its waters catching the sunrise on a thin veil of mist. In that thin light, something shimmered, more than the river's own reflection. A flash of molten amber that seemed to pulse with a secret heartbeat. Legends told of a beast of sunrise, a horse whose mane was forged of pure gold, and whose hooves left trails of glittering dust wherever it trod. Those who had heard the story called it Yah, the Golden Horse, and swore that whoever earned its trust would never need to beg for fortune again. Chapter 1: Lloyd and the Golden Whisper. Lloyd Harlan was 31, a lean man with a scar that cut across his left cheek, a souvenir from a foolish brawl he'd rather forget. He lived on the edge of a town called Murray Field, a crooked line of weather-worn shacks and a single, dimly lit tavern that served cheap whiskey and whispered gossip. Yah had come to him on a night when the wind howled like a wounded animal. The horse appeared from the canyon, its coat a cascade of gilt that seemed to swallow sunlight. Lloyd, half drunk, had muttered a nonsense phrase, "do-do-dool," more out of amusement than intention. To his astonishment, the golden mare turned her amber eyes toward him, lowered her head, and with a soft whinny seemed to understand. From that moment, a pact was forged. Yah would follow the commands Lloyd whispered, leading him to the gold that lay beneath the river's bend. In exchange, Lloyd would protect her from the world's greed. The first night they found the gold, the river's current revealed a shallow vein of glittering ore. Lloyd knelt, brushed away mud and water, and held a fistful of bright metal that sang against his skin. He laughed, a sound that echoed off the canyon walls, and his voice caught the wind. "Do-do-dool," he said again, and Yah's ears pricked. She stamped her hooves, and the river's edge seemed to glow a little brighter. But gold, as old stories warned, attracts shadows. Chapter 2: The Zoo Gang. At the edge of town, a rusted sign read, "The Zoo," a club that was anything but a sanctuary for animals. Its members, men with tattoos of snarling beasts and eyes hardened by endless fights, were known as the Zoo Gang. Their leader, Omar Haskell, was 34, tall, with a shaved head and a scar from a bullet that never left his cheek. He carried a pistol that never left his side and a reputation that made strangers think twice before stepping onto his turf. Omar's ambition was simple: own the gold and possess the legendary horse everyone talked about in tavern whispers. He learned of Yah through a battered newspaper clipping he bought from a drunk patron. "Man claims to have a golden horse. Local legend, likely a hoax." That was all the information he needed. The Zoo Gang was already armed, with rifles, pistols, and a stash of smuggled dynamite, small, potent sticks that could turn a man's life into ash in an instant. The first attempt was a bold raid. Late one night, Omar's men slipped through the cracked fence of Lloyd's modest homestead, eyes hungry for the gleam of gold. Lloyd woke to the crack of the first gunshot, the smell of gunpowder, and the sight of a shadow moving toward the stable. "Yah, do-do-dool," he shouted, his voice raw with panic. Yah, sensing danger, kicked the door open with a thunderous force, sending a cascade of hay and a spray of dust into the air. Lloyd seized a stick of dynamite, lit the fuse, and threw it toward the intruders. The explosion was small, just enough to shatter the gang's wooden weapon racks and send a few men sprawling, their ears ringing with the snap of blown metal. The gang fled in disarray, their faces hidden behind bandanas, the night swallowing their retreat. After the smoke cleared, Lloyd stood in the wreckage, breathing hard. He was bruised, his shirt torn, but his heart beat steady. He knew from that night onward, the Zoo Gang wouldn't stop. Chapter 3: Nightmares and the River's Call. The explosion left more than physical scars. That night, as the moon hung low over the river, Lloyd dreamed of Omar's cold eyes, of dark silhouettes bearing guns, and of Yah's golden mane turning to ash. He awoke drenched in sweat, the phrase, "do-do-dool," echoing in his mind like a mantra. Days later, With Yar at his side, Lloyd once again followed the river's secret path. The water glistened, reflecting the gold that lay beneath the surface. Yet his mind was plagued by a feeling of vulnerability. He was not observant enough, and the river's edge offered little protection. He needed guards, men who could keep the gang at bay while he harvested the gold. He tried to recruit locals, but fear clung to them like rust. The only one willing to join him was Justin Miller, a 30-year-old carpenter with a quick grin and a talent for handling firearms. Justin's reputation was modest, but his loyalty was fierce. Chapter 4: The Pub at Murie Field. On a damp evening, the two friends, Lloyd and Justin, decided to celebrate a small haul of gold at the Murie Field pub, a dimly lit tavern that smelled of stale beer and wood smoke. Yar, ever vigilant, waited outside, her golden coat catching the flickering lantern light. The laughter inside was short-lived. The zoo gang, having tracked Lloyd's movements, burst through the door, pistols raised. Omar, flanked by his lieutenants, stared at Lloyd with a cold fire. "You think you can hide gold from me?" Omar snarled. "Give me the horse, and maybe I'll let you live." A barrage of gunfire erupted. Justin, from behind the wooden bar, fired his rifle while shouting, "Take cover, Lloyd." The bullet spray cracked the air, shattering glass and sending shards into the chaos. Lloyd, his heart pounding, ducked behind a table and pulled a stick of dynamite from his coat, one he'd kept for emergencies. He lit the fuse, the tiny spark flaring against his shaking hands. "Do-do-dool, Yar," he yelled, hoping his horse would understand. A deafening boom echoed as the dynamite detonated, sending a wave of heat and a cloud of dust into the tavern. Omar's men stumbled, disoriented. Yet, the gang was relentless. Justin took a direct hit, his body collapsing onto the scarred floor. His eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, his breath shallow. Lloyd felt the world tilt. He saw a flash of silver as Omar lunged for Yar, who had slipped through the back door and was now trapped on the street. The gang seized her, a rope tangled around her golden mane, and dragged her away. Blood spattered on Lloyd's cheek as he tried to fire his own pistol, but his hands trembled. The gun jammed. Omar's men forced their way into the tavern, shouting for the horse and the gold. Lloyd escaped through a broken window, the night air biting his skin, his mind reeling from Justin's death and Yar's disappearance. He stood alone under the rain, clutching a small sack of gold that felt heavier than ever. Chapter 5: The Prison of Gold. Omar's confidence swelled. He commanded his men to keep Yar under watch while he tried to coax the horse into revealing the river's hidden treasure. He spoke in the same phrase that had bonded Lloyd and Yar, "Do-do-dool." The golden mare, however, stared back with eyes that seemed to hold a flicker of intelligence that refused to bend to a bully's command. Days passed, and the horse refused to obey Omar. Frustrated, Omar ordered his men to beat her into obedience. The beating was brutal. Yar's golden coat was speckled with bruises, her mane matted with blood. The gang grew impatient. Yet, even in her weakened state, Yar's spirit clung to a spark of loyalty. Lloyd, wandering the desolate roads with a bruised heart, caught sight of a battered, gold-smeared horse in a shallow ditch near an abandoned homestead. He rushed forward, heart pounding, but the horse lay still, eyes shut, breath shallow. He knelt, whispering, "Do-do-dool," and placed a trembling hand upon her flank. Tears streamed down his face. He believed she was dead. With a final, choked kiss, he whispered, "I love you, my golden girl." He turned, his mind made up. He would find Omar, the zoo gang, and exact his revenge. Chapter 6: The Hunt Begins. Armed with a new stash of dynamite, purchased from a black market dealer who insisted on being paid in gold, Lloyd set out to track the zoo gang. He followed a trail of broken twigs, faint hoof prints, and the occasional glint of gold dust left behind by the gang's hasty movements. He moved under cover of night, his senses sharpened by grief and fury. The canyon walls seemed to pulse, as if the river itself whispered encouragement, urging him onward. By the third day, he arrived at a hidden clearing where the gang had set up a makeshift camp. He watched from the shadows as Omar paced, a cigarette glowing between his fingers, his men laughing and loading their rifles. Lloyd's pulse surged. He slipped a stick of dynamite into his satchel, his fingers trembling. He waited for the right moment, a chance to strike when the gang was distracted. At dawn, as the sun rose over the canyon, painting the sky in hues of amber, Omar called his men together. "We will move her to the river at noon. The gold will be ours." He gestured toward a shack where Yah was chained, her golden mane still tangled, but her eyes, though half closed, still glimmered with a faint, defiant light. Lloyd took a deep breath. The time had come. Chapter 7: The Midnight Explosion. When the gang left the shack to fetch water, Lloyd slipped inside. He untied Yah's rope, his hands shaking. The horse, though battered, nuzzled his cheek, as if thanking him. He whispered once more, "Do-do-dool," and the mare's ears perked up. Lloyd led Yah out toward the canyon edge, where the river roared. He took a moment to set the dynamite, 3 sticks, carefully arranged in a small trench near the gang's makeshift camp. The plan was simple, a diversion that would give him and Yah a chance to escape, while the gang was forced to scatter. He lit the fuses, the soft hiss cutting through the morning air. "Run, Yah, run," he shouted as the sticks burst in a powerful, thunderous explosion. The ground shook. The gang's weapons clattered to the earth, their tents crumpled. Smoke and dust rose like a choking cloud. In the chaos, Omar scrambled, his eyes wide with fury. He raised his pistol, but his gun jammed, spooked by the explosion. Yah bolted, her golden mane catching the light, sprinting down the riverbank with Lloyd at her side. The gang regrouped, shouting orders, but the explosion had broken their concentration. Omar, enraged, shouted, "Find them. Find the horse. Bring me the gold." Lloyd, riding atop Yah, headed toward the hidden gold vein. He dug with a small spade, his hands raw and bleeding. By noon, his bag was heavy with glittering ore. He turned, hoping to see a retreating enemy, but the canyon's walls seemed to swallow the sounds of pursuit. He thought he was safe, until a sudden shot rang out, echoing off the stone. A bullet whizzed past Yah, missing her flank by inches. The shot came from a concealed sniper positioned atop a rock ledge, one of Omar's surviving men, trying to salvage the situation. Lloyd realized his escape was not yet complete. Chapter 8: The Final Confrontation. Lloyd pressed forward, moving deeper into the canyon where the river carved a narrow gorge. The gold weighed heavily on his shoulders, but the weight of vengeance pressed harder on his heart. He heard a low, guttural snarl. Omar had caught up. The two men faced each other at the edge of a precipice, the river roiling far below. "You think you can kill me and keep the horse?" Omar snarled, his pistol aimed at Lloyd's chest. "You already lost," Lloyd replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "The horse belongs to the river, and the river belongs to the gold. You can't own what you don't understand." When Omar tried to fire, his gun misfired, damaged by the earlier explosion. In an instant, Lloyd lunged forward, pushing Omar over the edge. The gangster's scream was swallowed by the canyon's roar as he fell into the torrent, disappearing beneath the frothing waters. The remaining gang members froze, stunned. Without their leader, their resolve cracked. Some fled, others fell to their knees in fear. Lloyd, breathing heavily, turned to face his remaining adversary, a hulking bruiser who had tried to beat Yah before. The man raised a club, but Lloyd was already a step ahead. He thrust forward, his fist connecting with the man's jaw, sending him sprawling across the rocky ground. The rest of the gang, seeing their leader dead and their comrades beaten, scattered into the night. Yah, still trembling, approached her rider. Loyalty, though bruised, shone in her golden eyes. Chapter 9: A New Order. In the aftermath, Lloyd stood at the edge of the canyon, gold spilling from his sack, the river's cold mist brushing his face. He surveyed the broken remains of the Zoo gang, scattered, leaderless, and defeated. A thought settled in his mind like a stone in a river. The power of the gold was not in its value, but in what it could buy: trust, loyalty, and protection. He could take the gold and disappear, but the canyon had given him something far richer: a bond with Yar and a chance to rebuild. He decided to recruit the surviving members of the Zhou gang, not as subordinates, but as guardians. He approached the broken, bruised men, offering them a share of the gold in exchange for their oath to protect Yar and the river's treasure. Their eyes widened. The promise of legitimate wealth, free from Omar's tyranny, was a siren call. One by one, they bowed their heads, swearing fealty to Lloyd. The agreement was simple: no more stealing, no more killing, only stewardship. Chapter 10: The Golden Legacy. Months passed. The gold that had once been hidden beneath the river's bend was now processed and turned into coins, jewelry, and bars, each bearing the emblem of a golden horse. The wealth flowed into the small community of Muri Field, bringing roads, a school, and a proper clinic. The once shabby tavern was renovated into a community hall where stories were told, and laughter echoed against the canyon walls. Yar, now healthy and unburdened, roamed the fields with regal grace. She became a symbol of hope, a living legend that reminded everyone that loyalty and love could tame even the harshest of greed. Lloyd, though still carrying his scars, grew older with a calm that contrasted his youthful fury. He would often be seen at the river's edge, whispering, "Do-do-dul," to Yar, the phrase now a personal ritual, a reminder of the night he first found her, the night he lost a friend, and the night he conquered death. The former Zhou gang members, now known as the River Guard, patrolled the canyon, ensuring no outsider could disturb the balance. They wore simple leather vests, each bearing a small golden pendant shaped like Yar's silhouette. When the town's children asked about the golden horse, Lloyd would smile, his eyes distant, and tell them the tale. There was a time when men thought gold could buy anything. They ignored the whisper of the river, the softness in a horse's eyes, and the strength found in loyalty. The gold is a gift, yes, but the real treasure is the bond we share, with each other and with the earth itself. Epilogue: The River's Promise. Years later, as the sun set behind the canyon, casting an amber glow over the water, Yar stood on a hill, her mane shimmering like a sunrise. Lloyd, now gray-haired but still upright, rode beside her. The river guard stood in formation, eyes vigilant, yet calm. In the distance, a lone figure approached, a traveler with a battered notebook, eyes wide with wonder. He stopped, gazing at the golden horse and the man beside her. "Is it true?" he whispered. Lloyd turned, his voice soft but resonant. "It is true, lad. It is true as long as we remember that what we call gold is only a reflection of the light that already lives inside us. And as long as you hear the river's whisper, you too can find the gold within." The traveler smiled, taking notes, his heart stirring with the story of the golden horse that had turned a violent world into a sanctuary of peace. The river flowed on, relentless and pure, its song echoing through the canyon cliffs, a timeless promise that the true treasure is never lost, only waiting to be found. The End. Story by Kayode Ike.